Join us as we go behind the scenes of today's most notorious cybercrime, translating cybersecurity into everyday language that's practical and easy to understand. We appreciate you making this an award-winning podcast by downloading our episodes on Apple and Spotify and subscribing to our YouTube channel. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and now the show. So, how the hell have you been? You got the Buc-ee's cup. That is awesome. That is awesome.
I love my Buc-ee's cups.
I got mine right there. Yeah,
there you go. How has life been treating you?
It's been good. Things have been busy. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, it's really good. You know, I'm like a cybersecurity geek. So
I know you are.
I was at a company for a long time, almost 10 years, which is a long time for me to do anything, frankly. And then, you know, I have known about this smaller group, but they're a good size over in Lexington, Kentucky. Right. And he's been in IT since for a decade, if not longer, but he did a bunch of stuff in the military. And he and I knew each other at my old job, and we stayed in touch. And then I joined this company, and then we were sitting there talking, and we were both like, you work for the same company? Like, we didn't even know.
Be more on point, David.
I really do.
Guys, it's guys, you know, guys don't tell each other anything, you know,
it's such a guy thing. Like,
you know,
guys don't tell anybody anything.
Right.
My wife, all the time, you've got to tell me how you're feeling. I'm like, I'm feeling like I don't want to talk about anything. I get it. No, I work all day. I don't want to talk about my work when I'm through.
No, that's exactly right. Isn't it true? It is so true. Like,
nobody wants to do that.
No.
People are like, tell me about your day and stuff like that. I'm like, no.
I want to talk. I had a good day.
I want to hear about anything else. That's why, like, the election was a distraction.
That's right.
Like, just so that we could talk about something insane.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's why I do true crime podcasts. I listen to them. You know,
I'm going to get started. So that way we can just wrap into it.
Have I shown you my little desk ornament?
No, I want to see it. What happened to your? Oh my God, that's
Slayer.
fantastic.
A nice little storage thing there. Oh yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
It's a great band too.
Was that Slayer?
Was Slayer.
I saw Bruce. You had a post about, like, we did some spotlight on an employee, and he had a post, and it said like favorite musician, and it was like
Metallica. Yeah, Metallica.
It was like, that's just so great. We are joined by none other than one of the former most wanted cybercriminals the U.S. Secret Service called the original cybercrime godfather. He should have been an actor, but he wound up here. Mr. Brett Johnson. Brett,
thank you. I'm good. How are you guys doing? Bruce,
I am great.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
Great to meet you too, Brett.
He's a fan, so
I am.
I've been telling him all about you, and he's like, "Well, I gotta sit through this. I gotta join.
Can I come on the show? See if this guy's an idiot or not."
So Brett is, and one of the big things I forgot to mention is that he's now good guy. Like, he's worked for more than a decade and a half, helping law enforcement, been an instrumental part of some of the bigger stings that you see. We're not allowed to talk about that, but anything you want to share, I love stories.
Sure.
But speaking of stories, back in the day, like, let's back up, because it's been a while since you've been on.
All right.
Just Reader's Digest version, like, you were cyber criminal for back in the day. Like, what, you were the head of a group. I don't know what your title was. I don't know if you were the COO. I don't know if you guys had titles, little business cards. I don't know, but it was the Shadow Crew, and then you were helping the government, and ever since you've done that. But during the time when you were repenting, you were just right before we started, you were mentioning that you were serving time. We were talking about the musicians that we loved. Bruce loves Metallica. I grew up on Kiss and Peter Frampton, among, like, Leonard Skinner and all the others. And Brett has
Slayer guy.
Slayer toy on his desk. And Brett had mentioned that you had done some time with the one of the guys that somebody that was involved in trying to kill Peter Frampton.
Now,
share that story, please.
Bear in mind, this guy was not the sharpest tool in the shed. He was in prison. He was a good guy, and you find that out a lot. Some people that they cannot function properly as good citizens when they're free men. But once you get them behind the fence and everything is controlled, they're really good guys. And this was a good guy behind the fence. I have no idea. Right. I do know that. So Peter Frampton was having a concert in some arena. It was an open arena was what it was. And
he was famous for those in the 70s. He would have those concerts on in San Francisco, San Diego.
Yep.
It was like a beach environment. Like it was just like, they were phenomenal live shows.
Yeah. And I told you, I saw Frampton 3-4 years ago, and he was great. He was. I was thinking when he got on the stage, I was thinking, this guy's half dead. He's not going to be able to do anything. But the guy was brilliant. He really was.
That's phenomenal.
Well, this guy that I served time with happened to have a house outside of one of the stadiums. So what this son of a bitch does is he literally builds a catapult. I kid you not. He builds a catapult and he starts shooting shit over top of the stadium in the hopes of hitting Peter Frampton in the head.
First of all, one of the most cockamamie ideas about trying to like assassinate somebody I've ever heard. Second of all, it's like sounds like Monty Python and the Holy Grail. It's like you're launching cows over the castle.
Yeah. So this guy starts doing this. And of course, the stadium cops, they call the police, and it's not hard to find the guy. You just simply look at the arc of objects that's flying over top of the stadium.
Wow.
Yeah. So they go get the sumbitch and give him an appropriate amount of time. I don't know how much he got out of that. When I was serving time with him, he was in for meth charges. Big surprise.
Yeah, shocking because the strategic planning involved in the catapult of the show.
But you get people like that. I mean, it's
it sounds like a meth binge though. Dude, like kind of like I've got an idea. Yeah, that Peter Frampton guy must go. Let's get the catapult. Yeah, not a gun.
How are you going to get something into this?
Get the catapult loaded.
We'll use a catapult, David.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. But understand that, and this kind of alludes to a lot of the prison environment. Yeah, prison is a dangerous place, but at the same time, you have a lot of fun in prison with idiots like that. And I can't say I wasn't an idiot too sometimes behind the fence, but you have a lot of fun, man. Everyone's it's like a big happy family, except you've got some black sheep that have knives. Yeah, that's what it's like.
And you just got to not get involved with them or dodge them, I would imagine.
Or run from it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you do a lot of global public speaking.
I do.
I mean, you are phenomenal. Every time I see you on the media or social media, like in Dubai and in all these like crazy places that I'm like, man, it was kind of on my bucket list. That'd be kind of cool to visit. And they're like paying you to go out there. And like, that's just crazy. What are some of your latest ones?
So of course I was in Dubai. That's the only, I went to Berlin this last year. I had fun doing that. I'm going to Africa.
Really?
I am. So Jitex right now is working to bring me into Africa because they really liked me when I was in Dubai. And I got to tell you, man, I had that conference, Jitex conference in Dubai, the largest tech conference in the world. And I mean, when it's large, I mean, good Lord.
It's bigger than anything we do in the States?
Probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 times the size of RSA.
Wow.
I mean, huge.
Holy cow.
Huge. You know, and when I say tech, they had the electric cars there. They had the flying cars there. They had all this stuff.
Oh my God.
I was very fortunate to have been invited in.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey there, cybercrime junkies. Got a question that keeps you up at night, or ever wish you could hear from a specific guest, or have a true cybercrime story you want us to investigate? You can now text our studio directly at 904-867-4466. Don't be a stranger. Text us at 904-867-4466. Don't miss the chance to be part of the conversation. Text us direct at 904-867-4466.
None of that was in Dubai when I was there 35 years ago. I'd love to go there now. Yeah.
But they invited me in, Jitex did, and I was very grateful to come in. And, you know, before I went there, I think I told you that I've been having a lot of apathy in the cybersecurity field, you know, because businesses and consumers.
We've talked about that. Yeah, because it's in a lot of ways, it's a broken industry. Like the vendors have done it wrong. They've gone to market the wrong way. Like people are like shilling products, like, and then small business is like, oh, if I buy this product, I'm going to be secure and it's done. And it's like, none of that is accurate. It's a process. It's like you don't buy strategic planning. Like you don't buy it in a box. Like it's it's just a mess.
Yeah, but I got to tell you, this conference and the people that I met, and people that I got to listen to, like I got to listen to the CISO of Dubai, Dr. Al-Kuwaiti.
Wow.
Experience. I no longer have that degree of apathy. I mean, it was
really?
life-changing.
It was
experience.
Inspiring.
It was. So I was very fortunate. A couple of weeks ago, one of the GITEX people was like, "Hey, would you like to go to Africa?" And I was like,
"Sure."
I would.
Yeah.
so they're working right now to bring me in. Hopefully that will take place. A couple of other engagements. What I'm going to do this year, because I take that Ghostbusters philosophy of no job is too big, no fee is too big. I am going to, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to try to do every single engagement that I possibly can at a price that the groups can afford. Instead of me just quoting out this large fee that I've been doing, or that my agent has been doing, we're not going to do that. I want to get out there and work and talk to people. So I'm going to do, small groups, banking
That's
industry.
good. There's so many organizations, especially in the finance industry, that could really, really benefit from hearing from you.
So I'm hoping, truthfully, I'm hoping to do about 200 engagements, both virtual and online.
So you're going, I'm
going to go full out, man.
Well, you were kind of at that pace before COVID.
I was. And I tell you, I was at that pace, and it got to the point that I was first in a city, had no idea the city I was in.
Right.
And then I landed in Atlanta, and I was immediately flying out again. I didn't even get to leave the airport. I was flying out again. And as I was going through TSA, they were like, "Where did you come from?" And I couldn't tell them. I had no clue.
I have no idea.
So yeah, it got to that point. But yeah,
it's probably the same thing Peter Frampton would say when he was touring.
Yeah, but I want to, I figure I don't want to keep doing this like Frank Abagnale's done until he's 76 and still doing this stuff. I want to quit, hopefully by the time I'm 60. I'm turning 55 next month. So I want to do 5 years and quit before I become the person that doesn't know what I'm talking about anymore.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Yeah. Makes absolute perfect sense. So, what are some of the topics that you address when you do some of these speeches?
I want to talk about, because I literally, and I've been thinking about this for, probably 2 months. I let these ideas kind of foment a while before I start talking about them. So I want to talk about entitlement here in a little bit, but stuff that I talk about the criminal mindset. I talk about, thinking like an attacker, because, you aren't an attacker.
It's so important, because how do you defend against a foe you don't know or you don't understand?
But what I see, here's what I see. And I agree. You need to try to think like an attacker, but do not come to me and say, "Hey, I know how to think like a criminal." No, you don't, because you are not one. All right. You can try that, but you need to be humble enough. And that's the whole thing. It's this lack of humility that I continue to see when people, they classify all criminals as the same. We are not. Right. And I refer to myself as a criminal today because I still have the mindset, still have the temptations. I just don't have the entitlement that I used to when I was committing crime. So, if you're going to try to think like a criminal, at least have the humility and be humble enough to admit that, hey, I'm not a criminal. And while I try to do that, at the end of the day, I really can't achieve 100% accuracy. Yeah, I can do some things right. I can look at the vertical, the types of fraud that other businesses have been hit with in that vertical, look at my own security and say, hey, if I was this guy, I would probably hit my company with this technique, and you'd probably be right. So you can do that. But, the lack of humility that I see when you see these people that are getting up there bragging about thinking like a criminal, that doesn't work. What that's going to do is that's going to cause more harm than good. You're going to come up and say, yes, I know how to think exactly like a criminal. You're going to convince management of some technique that no criminal ever would employ, is what you're going to do. And they even have conferences about that. Black hat people get around and talk about exploits and vulnerabilities that no criminal ever would do.
I know and I read your work, and I think you and I were chatting about that. Like during some of these conferences, they're kind of out of touch with really what the threats are actually happening. And there's business leaders need to know those.
Yeah, there's a reason for that. You've got 8,500 security companies out there, and they're all trying to sell a product. And lo and behold, every study that one of those security companies comes out with focuses only on their product. The crime that we're seeing, the attacks that we're seeing just happens to be A, and we solve A.
Yep.
So, yeah.
We used to say in the military, you're always preparing for the previous war. So we were getting ready for Vietnam when we had to go to the Middle East, right? We had to turn all our woodland camis into desert camis and retrain ourselves for desert warfare. And I think that's so true with cybercrime. So many of the organizations that are fighting it, They're fighting it from the perspective of what they saw. Whereas the people who I find most interesting at conferences are people like you, Brett, that have that. There's no substitute for experience, right? And you've got that experience of having done that work on that side of the field. And so, that I think that's a great explanation you said about the sense of entitlement that someone who's willing to do the cybercrime has in comparison to someone who's willing to think like a cyber attacker and try to mimic that.
And that's the thing is the good guys, and hell, I don't even want to say we, I say the good guys don't have that sense of entitlement. And if you don't have that leads a lot to the thinking that criminal lifestyle and the criminal mentality, that criminal thought process. It leads a lot to that, so. And I literally just put up a post, and the reason I was a minute late signing in is I had to respond to one of the threads. One of the comments was there because the guy, what I said in my post is I was like, hey, and I'll tell you the same story. I was arrested February 8th, 2005. FBI got me within 45 minutes. The Secret Service, they come in, they take over the investigation. From there, the Secret Service, they let me foment in jail for 3 months until they got me out, figuring that, hey, that'll give this SOB a taste of it and he'll behave himself. Right. Little did they know, no, it won't. So I started
because the entitlement was still there.
It was. Yeah. So I start to work with the Secret Service from day one. I'm screwing them over from day one. Okay. And it took them 10 months to figure that out. And boy, were they upset. Yeah. So they throw me back in county jail. Well, what happens is the judge rules that they violated my bond improperly. They let me out after 2 weeks. No one calls the Secret Service to tell them. I walk out. I'm planning on going on the run because, hey, I'm not wanting to sit around and face those consequences. So I had been interviewing with a guy named Tom Zeller. He was the cybercrime writer for the New York Times at that point in time. And he had been flying into Columbia, South Carolina back and forth for those 10 months. So I called him up. Tom, I'm out. And he's like, I'll be there. So he hops on a plane, flies his ass over to Columbia, South Carolina. And he had to have known that Brett Johnson was not going to stay because, I mean, he beat a path to South Carolina. I got out one day. He was there the next. Oh. So the last question that guy asked me, he looks at me and was like, Brett, why did you do it? And I looked at him and I said, Tom, I did it all for Elizabeth. And he looked at me and his exact words, I remember those exact words to this day. His exact words were, God damn it, Brett, at some point you've got to accept responsibility. And I got to tell you, David, I had no idea what he was talking about. To me, that was the truth. And the truth of the matter now is that I believed my own bullshit. I had drank too much of my own Kool-Aid. And so,
well, you and I had that conversation before, and it was about how you were raised and how you saw love, and you felt like I needed more and more to give her more and more, and you would do anything to do it. Right?
Now, but understand, but I believed that. Okay.
Right.
But I also believed before I met her that I did it all for my wife. And I also believed before I got married that I did it all for my family and my sister and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Now you got to understand that I'm the guy. I'm constantly thinking about why I did and why I do the things that I do. Constantly. That's why I take these long drives. I'll drive 7 hours instead of popping on a plane to go and give a speech. And that allows me the time to process these things. So, and I've been fortunate enough to meet several other former criminals now that I'm on the good guy side. And I constantly hear these stories of, I to escape my neighborhood. I did it because I had no other choice. I did it, blah, 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 blah. And I keep thinking to myself, and that's this thing I've been processing for the past couple of months. I keep thinking to myself, it goes beyond that justification. It goes beyond those reasons that people come up with, that cognitive dissonance. There's got to be something else there.
Let me ask you, is it for the adrenaline rush of getting away with something?
So here's the thing. There absolutely is an adrenaline rush, man. There's when you are, like I was cybercrime and fraud, when you're committing those frauds or committing those online crimes, there's absolutely that adrenaline rush that comes from being able to do something that no one else can, or beating a $1 billion company, a $1 billion security company. That's there. And the ego boost goes with that too. Absolutely it does. Now, I will tell you this, and this was my experience. I've seen it with bank robbers. I've seen it with drug dealers, financial guys that are behind the fence, things like that. Those guys, while it does start like that, you get to the point where it's no longer like that, where it becomes this chore after a while. And you also get to the point where like I knew it. I was with, served time with bank robbers that knew it, with drug dealers, and I mean, high value drug dealers that knew there were signs that they were about to be arrested. Like, cops would stop them. They would have a trunk full of methamphetamine and the cops wouldn't search anything while they had been convicted previously. The cops would be like, yeah, just go on. You know, you saw that kind of stuff, or bank robbers would know that they were about to be arrested. And the thing is, those other guys, keep on trucking. You would keep committing crimes, even though it was obvious that you were about to be arrested or under investigation. And the reason is that you adopt this philosophy, this belief system of fatalism. Whatever is going to happen is going to happen. And that allows you to say to yourself, hey, it is what it is. If they're going to arrest me, they're going to arrest me anyway. And you keep committing crime so that you don't have to be stressed out and worry about law enforcement getting you. Hey, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. So it's that degree of fatalism that comes into play. And most upper tier or experienced criminals, they get to that point where they become fatalistic with what's happening. And I've seen it across the board. What I'm talking about with the entitlement, that root cause stuff. And there was a professor that, let me pull this up and I'll actually read what he says, because it's really interesting. I had been thinking about entitlement for a couple months before I even read this guy. And what caused me to find him was Luigi Mangione, because I was thinking, hey, if there's ever been an entitled guy, it's that guy thinking that he's entitled to murder somebody else. And I know that my opinion may be contrary to some other people's belief systems out there, those who support that, but I don't really care. At the end of the day, I know I am right. So,
and I mean, not that it's relevant, but I completely agree with you. Like, it is the definition of, like, there's the poster child of entitlement, and that's him. Like, there's absolutely no justification in my mind whatsoever. Now, his mission, or what he says he stood for, I understand.
Absolutely.
And I'm in favor of changing the system and everything.
Absolutely.
But that is like the most asinine way possible to do it. Like, that's going to accomplish nothing.
So right? Hey, and I get you. Hey, United Healthcare, worst in the business. I'm down with that. I've said it before. I'll say it again.
But that's not what the topic of discussion is.
Exactly.
This is
that does not entitle you to go out and murder the guy, because guess what? That don't do no good. They're just going to hire another CEO, and they're going to keep on trucking anyway.
Right.
And we're still going to have the world's best healthcare system and the world's most challenging access to healthcare.
There you go.
It doesn't mean you could kill people. Right.
So this paper is called and I found this like last week, Psychology, Not Circumstances, An Understanding of Crime as Entitlement, written by Professor Matt DeLisi and a couple of others at Iowa State University. And the part that I keep quoting, and I only quote it because of the definition, the part that I keep quoting, he says, in the psychological literature, entitlement is a term that essentially refers to a frame of mind that prioritizes the whims, wants, and needs of the individual over the rights, desires, and needs of others. Entitlement thinking goes beyond normal selfishness because it elevates the belief that one is deserving of special treatment, unearned privileges, and respect, independent of effort. The consequences of entitlement thinking are devastating. Entitlement thinking divorces individuals from personal responsibility. It impedes recognition of the consequences that stem from that individual's behavior, and it leads the individual to view wants and desires as rights whose pursuit is beyond reproach. So what does that mean? I use that story again with Tom Zeller, me saying Elizabeth and everything else.
Well, the difference between selfishness and entitlement, let's walk there. Walk us through that. And then we'll get into, and then explain to us like what the actual definition is.
Sure. So selfishness, I mean, what would you say that is? That's
self-centered, like everything conceited. About one, right? Conceited, right. All of that.
But that doesn't mean that I'm acting on that selfishness, because I can be selfish, and I am. I can be selfish but understand that I am and work against that. Right. When you're entitled, it goes beyond that selfishness. You no longer understand that you have that problem.
And it's at the detriment of others.
It absolutely is.
It's scorched earth around you.
You are bringing harm to your environment at that point. So that story that I told you about Tom Zeller and the Secret Service, he asked the question, and I tell him, Elizabeth, that was my justification. So that justification led to, and I believe that because you have to believe your justification, you have to. So that justification led to that entitlement. So think about it. I'm using the excuse of I did it all for love. What is more noble than that? That puts me absolutely, as the professor says, that puts me absolutely beyond reproach. My actions are noble. They're good actions at the end of the day.
And therefore, you don't have to take accountability for
That's
your
exactly
actions.
right.
It's not me.
No, it's not me.
It's a noble act.
I have to do this.
Right.
I have to. It's for her. So what bigger line of BS could there be than something like that? Except for maybe if you're saying, hey, I'm doing this for the American people. I'm shooting this guy in the back at 6 o'clock in the morning for the American people in order to start the revolution.
Right.
That's that same sense of entitlement. Now this guy that just responded to my LinkedIn post, and I use this as an example in my post as well. I say, hey, it doesn't matter if it's a guy that murders his wife because he called her cheating. It doesn't matter if it's somebody that's shoplifting food to feed their family or falsely filing income taxes, cheating on taxes or filing false claims.
Because the government is bad.
Right. The only thing that matters is those are simply excuses that lead to the entitlement needed to victimize someone else. And all those are victims. That spouse is, the government is, all those are victims across the line. The grocery store you're stealing food is, and all that. And hey,
in the cybersecurity space, we see this, Brett, because the cybercriminals that operate in parts of Russia that feel entitled because it's Mother Russia and bad America, right? Bad red, white, and blue, and they will go and do it, and there will be no impunity. Exactly. Right. Like they operate with, there will be impunity. Like they'll operate without any consequences, and they'll bankrupt a business, and they're like, and I'm justified.
That's it. Right? I'm doing it for my country.
I'm doing it for my country.
For the good of my country.
Right.
So
even though they're putting people out of work, kids aren't going to go to college, people will lose their house.
And people get upset with that, with me saying that it doesn't matter if you're stealing food to support your family. It's still entitlement because guess what? You got food banks in your city. I know that.
Right.
You could probably go and ask a neighbor, hey, you got any food? We don't have any in our house, but you are too prideful to do that.
You feel entitled.
I have to do this to support my family. So I have to victimize someone else to meet my wants, needs, and desires.
It's a good frame to look at the mind of a hacker or the mind of when I say hacker, there's good hackers. There's white, gray, black, purple.
And you think about them. And and you're right. You got the nation state guys that the ideology leads to is the justification, which leads to that sense of entitlement. I can do this. I can bring harm to others. You got the guys that are on Telegram doing refunding fraud or account takeovers or whatever. I'm not hurting an individual. I'm hurting a company that can afford it. That's the entitlement.
Right.
That's the justification. I'm not causing harm.
Let me ask you about a specific industry, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Because you know all about credit card fraud and banking fraud and things like that. What are the most common tactics that are affecting, the small community banks, the little credit unions, things like that? I just want to ask about a vertical just because it's one that I'm just curious about because that's one of those ones that I think people feel entitled. It's a bank. They have all this money. And I know those little banks, like they don't. And and it's like a small business.
I'll tell you the biggest problem. And I'm glad you asked that. I actually had a lunch meeting with some agents over 2 months ago. And they were like, hey, could you post this online? And I've not. So we can talk about that here right now. One of the big problems that you're seeing in credit unions is instant transfers between members. So what the criminals are doing is they're becoming members of a credit union or they're taking over someone's account. Usually it's just they're coming in and becoming members, okay? Then they take over someone's account. Because you have instant transfers inside of that environment, those transfers are instantaneous. You transfer out $500 from the account you've taken over to the account you control. You go to the ATM, pull the cash out. That specific crime is eating credit unions alive right now. And what we found out is that, hey, if you just delay It's maybe it's a brand new account. There's a little suspicious activity, multiple devices signing into the account, whatever that is. Something's raising a flag somewhere, different IPs, what have you. If you just delay that transfer, instead of it being instantaneous, saying, hey, 72 hours or a week is what it's going to take to get that money sent over. If you do that, a lot of that crime that hits that specific credit union dries up at that time. So that's really the problem that's eating them alive. Another problem that's eating them alive, of course, is the check situation. You saw that Chase quote unquote glitch issue. Matter of fact, I deposited a check in my bank account yesterday. I was going to withdraw money, and it immediately says funds unavailable. I'm sitting there looking at it like, what?
And then it literally just put it in.
Yeah. It hits me. It's like, oh, it's because these idiots depositing bad checks and immediately withdrawing money. I get it. All right. That's a problem. I mean, it's good because banks want to make sure their customers are happy. But the problem is that criminals like I used to be, we take advantage of things like that. We see that as an opening to profit. And it is. So you have to understand these products and services and how they can be used for fraud before you implement them. Else you get the Chase glitch, which wasn't a glitch. It's a problem with policies and procedures. So you have to understand that before you implement those things. That someone like me is going to eat you alive.
Well, it's the balance between convenience and wanting more market share and offering more features and benefits to a customer and security.
Now, hey, you can implement that. You can. All right. You can do that instant to instant, but are you looking at every single data point that you need to ensure that fraud isn't going to happen? No, you're not. You're not. You're not looking at all the devices coming into the environment. You're not looking at all the different IP changes. You're not looking at that kind of stuff. You're just assuming that everything's kosher. And these days, what we're seeing is and it happens with these credit unions as well. We're seeing this man-in-the-middle attack that's capturing the session token of logins. So I don't need your password and login. I bypass multi-factor at that point. And because a lot of these financial institutions simply look at the cookie and nothing outside of that, it makes those transfers very successful.
And that is why the FBI issued the warning, do not click remember me. So for listeners or viewers, for convenience, again, on the one side of the scale, convenience is you can click that and then it saves your session. The problem is there's a million vulnerabilities. They get in, one of the first things they're going to do is grab those session cookies because then they can log in just as you. They don't need your password, your multi-factor. They're already logged in and then they become you.
And you're absolutely right. But there's another problem other than that. So the other problem is, how lazy was the developer on the website? How lazy? Mm-hmm. Were they lazy enough that, while I have multi-factor to log in, sometimes multi-factor is deployed again at a transfer? Was that developer so lazy that the same login multi-factor token is used and can bypass the one that's inside of the environment? Maybe. Was the developer so lazy that if I don't click remember me, once I sign out, can that same session token still be
used? In some cases, I've seen it. Yeah. In a lot of cases, I've seen it still be able to be used.
So you have to wonder who's developing the sites. Because that becomes a problem too. I mean, it's a huge issue. It's a huge issue.
It is a big issue. I mean, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that's what CISA is talking about secure by design. Like when we get new laptops, I got a couple laptops here. When we get a new laptop out of the box, like that thing is designed to run an airport. Like it has like super admin privileges. Right. You have to go in there and change a bunch of settings so that you can just put it on a network.
Right.
Like it's designed so that if you can take over the account of Mrs. Buttermaker over the third floor cubicle, you can have command and control over the whole network.
Right.
I mean, it's really, really not designed right.
And we're not addressing that. We're not.
Mm-mm.
When I was working with Arcos and very fortunate that we got to speak to a lot of the major banks, and those major banks were being hit with that session token takeover. And what we found out, not we, but I was fortunate at that point in time because, I have a lot of victims that reach out to me. I was fortunate at that point in time that some of these victims were coming to me and they were saying, hey, these banks, this happened. These banks refuse to reimburse me because they're not looking past that session token. They're not looking at the change of devices or the change of IPs or anything else like that. They're simply going by the session token. Now that they've been eaten alive with it, it's not been public, but they have. Now they've been eaten alive with it. they're now looking at more data points, trying to address that. The problem is that because that information isn't public, it's not bled down to those credit unions and those other financial institutions that have not been hit with that yet. So that's how a criminal like me works. I know that you guys are not going to talk about that. So while it's working at Bank A is not going to talk about that. Once Bank A employs whatever proper security they need to, it's not shared in the vertical. So I just go down to B, C, all the way to Z and eat it alive. That's the way crime happens. It's, you want to know how crime happens. There's a reason that most attacks use 90% known exploits, or 90% of attacks use known exploits. There's a reason for that. People don't, and I said it in a couple of interviews in the past and recently, the bad guys are winning because we are better at sharing and exchanging information than the good guys are.
Yep.
That's why.
That kind of dovetails, David, into another industry that I think about a lot is like the retirement community space and healthcare. And, a year ago, the gloves came off, right, so to speak, on those types of the organizations and industries that were somewhat agreed upon to not attack, right? And
there was almost like an understanding that they wouldn't go after the elderly, the sick, or the children,
or nuke power plants.
And you've seen massive amounts of attacks on them.
So I wonder, Brett, like our clients that are, residences for the elderly and things, what's the vulnerability there, and how does that relate to the small banks and credit unions that you're talking about, and things like these session cookies and all the things that grandma is using?
Sure. So understand that senior citizens, they are not the most victimized demographic.
Correct.
Millennials are. Okay.
Isn't that a shocking stat? I remember the first time I learned that, I'm like, what? They were millennials were digital natives.
Yeah.
But it's
got
because
a lot of apathy.
It's because of apathy. That's what we talked about. Yeah.
Which is crazy. When they
just assume there's ghosts in the wires, something's going to happen. It's that fatalistic view. It's like, well, whatever's going to happen is going to happen.
Yeah.
So why do I have to?
All this shit's connected.
Yeah. Why do I have to really pay attention here? Right.
Right.
I understand the mentality.
So why would I want to hit a senior citizen?
Right.
The reason is that, hey, they are not tech savvy.
Right.
They're not. They are living on a fixed income, so they can't afford all the security services that are out there. Hey, they think if they're not online at all, that they're safe. They're not. As a matter of fact, you're less safe at that point in time. So they think all these things together. All right. And that leads to far lower security. All right. At the same time, you've got government services and benefits that really don't look out for senior citizens, like the myssa.gov. All right. Most senior citizens have not signed on to that. Now, as a criminal, if I have your complete identity profile, which I can get pretty easily.
You can buy it on Amazon in an hour.
So if I have that profile, that fools is what
I meant the dark web. That operates like
Amazon. Well, hell, maybe you can buy it on Amazon.
I didn't mean
Jeff Bezos is always
Amazon,
looking to make money.
Just to be clear. I just meant on the dark web or Telegram.
Hey, I'll run with what you're saying.
No,
man.
That's not what I just wanted to be. I just said it, and then I was like,
it's as easy as.
They're going to think you could buy this on Amazon. That's not what I meant.
It's as easy as.
Yes. Right now, you got somebody, Amazon.
I know. They're like.
Well, coded by the same people, right? The same kind of people.
But here's the thing, and this gives an illustration, and also an illustration to the willingness of a criminal. All right. So it's easy enough for me to go to myssa.gov, sign in and under somebody else's or create an account using a senior citizen's information, get access to that account, and then divert their Social Security payment to a payment instrument that I have. Okay. That's easy. That's not a difficult thing at all. All right. It's interesting to me that you don't see a lot of that because of the ease of which you can do it. And I would argue the reason you don't see that is because of the willingness of the criminal themselves. They understand at some level, maybe even subconsciously, they understand that, hey, this is the only money these people are getting in. So I'll find some other way to victimize them. I'll use their stolen credit card details all day long because at the end of the day, I'm not hurting them. I'm hurting the bank. See, it's that justification that pops in again. Now, you mentioned something. This is really interesting to me too. We see, we had a lot of ransomware groups come out and say, we are not going to hit hospitals.
Right.
All right. You see the cartels now, or at least some of the cartels that are saying, hey, if you are manufacturing or selling fentanyl, we are going to kill you. And they're following through. The reason, and on the dark web marketplaces, you don't see fentanyl for sale. You don't see Rohypnol for sale. You don't see, well, sometimes you see, no, actually, you don't see GHB. You'll see BDO for sale. Instead.
GHB is the date rape drug.
It is. And GHB at one point was legal, and it was used by bodybuilders because it puts you in that deep sleep and allows those muscles to rebuild. All right. GHB, then they found out, hey, if you take a far lower dose of it, it makes you feel really good and you can party all night at a rave. And then they figured out, oh, if I slip some of it in a fruity drink, this girl will pass out and I can take advantage of her and rape her. So they outlawed the stuff, rightfully so. So you don't see GHB, fentanyl, you don't see Rohypnol, which is another date rape drug. Yeah. You don't see those things being sold on online marketplaces, dark web marketplaces. You don't see weapons in most marketplaces being sold. The reason for that is the consequences that come with those sales. The reason you see these ransomware companies, attackers, groups saying we are not going to hit hospitals is because of the consequences. All right. They know that once you pop that stuff up, law enforcement specifically is going to have a hard on for you.
They're going to be poking the bear.
That's it.
Poke the bear. Like the whole point is they want to make their cash and they want to be left alone.
Right.
They don't want heat.
Right. So you outlaw those items. You don't see, not that you'd ever see pressure cookers for sale on a dark web marketplace, but you don't see explosives for sale or anything like that.
Correct.
Because those items come with a lot of publicity and the profit on those items does not justify the possible consequences.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Imagine setting yourself apart from the competition because your organization is always secure, always available, and always ahead of the curve. That's NetGain Technologies, your total one source for cybersecurity, IT support, and technology planning. Picture picking up the phone and having decades of technology and cybersecurity expertise on the other end, like a bat phone, but with a team of specialists ready to make your business faster, easier, and more profitable. Since 1984, NetGain Technologies has designed, built, and implemented customized technology solutions for businesses of all kinds. They offer a clear roadmap and security plan to keep threats at bay, all at a predictable, affordable monthly cost. NetGain Technologies supports organizations across the United States, providing the benefits of a fully staffed in-house IT department and security team at a fraction of the cost. Get peace of mind. Get competitive. Get NetGain. Contact NetGain today at 844-777-6278 or reach out online at netgainit.com. That's netgainit.com and get ahead of your competition today. So on the dark web, you will see some sites that offer those, but they're not by the organized crime groups, and they're not there for very long.
Right.
They get taken down very quickly.
Exactly. So, and bear in mind, we're seeing infrastructure being hit. We're seeing hospitals being hit. And I would argue what's happening there is those institutions, those infrastructure institutions that are being hit or healthcare institutions that are being hit, their security is so bad that it makes it worth it for those attackers to do that.
Right. Or it's part of another campaign and they got in there.
Absolutely.
Like they launch it on everybody that has this software because it's an open vulnerability, and then they get in there and they're going to take whatever they can get.
Yeah.
So let me ask you about, and thank you for this. I love getting into the mind of a criminal and your philosophical approach to it, because you really have, when we first met, you are like the poster child for reform and for just repentance and all of it. And you do so much good for so many organizations. So it's just outstanding. Well, it just shows that people can change. You still have the thought, right?
Oh,
but you don't have to act on it.
Somebody emailed me, and I get some of these crazy emails sometimes. I've literally had.
Did they ask you, do you want to rob a bank with me? Or would they ask you,
I get the people that, will you train me to be a criminal? I get those guys sometimes.
That's ridiculous.
I've had people that literally the satellites are listening to me. I've had 3 or 4 of those guys, and I get a lot of I get some of the crazy religious people sometimes. And I got this email the other day, and I guess I got it right at just the right time for me. And the guy, he said, he was talking about watching me on Netflix. You know, I'm on that biggest heist show. He was talking about watching me on Netflix, and he was like, you know, he said, this thought that you have of being abandoned is wrong. You need to get past that. And he went on to say, you know, the thing is that you are where you are right now because, and he said God willed it. I'm not this Christian guy. I'm trying to find my faith. I am. But he said because God willed it. Well, I didn't take it as that. I was like, you know, this force in nature, this thing, call it God if you want to, because I'm certainly getting to that point of belief. And I have to say, you know, something did, man, because I mean, why am I not back in prison for 20 years? I understand my choices, you know, my desire to turn my life around absolutely plays a point. But, you know, I had people that reached out to me and took me in under their wing and put their careers on the line to give me that chance and didn't know if I didn't know if I was going to go back to commit crime at that point. That's the truth. But they put their careers on the line to give me a chance. And that email hit me. It hit me really hard at that point. So you are
a living legend in redemption. You really are. I mean, it's you show that, and it's not easy. I know that you and I have known each other now for some time, and it's you've got your struggles, but you are inspiring so many people. So before this ends, I want to ask you. Sure. Everybody's been talking about AI, and AI is going to come in and like feed cybercrime. And you had spoken about this, and you've had some writings on it, and you're like, I don't see it. Like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. Like it really hasn't had as much of an impact.
It's not yet.
Yeah. Right. So explain that, because so many people would be like, oh, I'm sure the cyber criminals are using AI and everything else. And I'm like, okay, well, to clean up a phishing email, like for word processing. Yeah. They're doing it they're translating a little, but okay. That's been around for years.
Yeah. And let's be honest. I mean, if before AI even hit, if you were trying to identify a phishing email because of syntax errors.
Yeah. That was not the point. Yeah, that was not that was not the real red flag.
No.
Right. So it's a good point.
The thing is that, and I forgot the guy's name, but Lex Friedman actually had an AI guy on his show a few weeks back. And he was saying the same thing that I've been saying, that, hey, right now, AI kind of sucks.
It's really not there yet, right?
It's not. All right. The thing for the criminal side is that we usually, and I keep saying we because I still refer to myself as a criminal, we really don't create anything. What we do is we repurpose a lot of stuff.
Right.
All right. So AI, that, you know, the chat GPT, stuff like that. I mean, it's not even really that good on what it's doing legally. The ease of use is not great. It's not ubiquitous. What am I going to use that for other than what you said of, you know, scanning over or verifying code or something like that? I'm not. Now you do see, absolutely, you do see a lot of chatter. What can I use it for? Can it be done for this? I think I'll do this. You'll see that. But actually doing it is completely different. Now, this guy and again, I forgot his name. I'm sorry about that. But he's one of the fathers of AI. What he said was, and it makes perfect sense to me. What he says is, hey, understand that AI is going full steam though. It's exponential in its improvement and its improvement and advancement, ease of use, everything else. And he predicted, and I can't really argue with what he said. He predicted that by late 25, it will be extremely successful and easy to use in a criminal environment. And he predicted that its main focus at that point, or main use, will be from that criminal nature, that criminals will absolutely start to use that. So think those deep fakes. You know, if you're able to do a real-time deep fake, both audio and video, that becomes extremely powerful. I saw one yesterday of the Fed Reserve guy, and they had like a Pornhub background, you know, and the guy was talking about, well, we've screwed this, we've screwed that, and screw you, and everything's, you know, over and over. And it was a very good deep fake. But what happens when you've got a real-time deep fake of audio and video of a CEO that comes out saying, hey, our company has lost this much money?
Right.
Well, your stock's going to go down. where you've got Trump saying,
you're definitely going to see that soon.
You are.
You're definitely going to see that soon, because we've seen, because the use of AI that I've seen in the social engineering context is what we've talked about. And that is, you get a phishing email, you try and verify with the actual person. They haven't answered yet. You don't act on it.
Right.
But then you get a calendar invite for a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting. You jump on and you see the person, and they look and sound the same. Yeah. Or even if there's some glitch or whatever, you just assume you're working from home. It must be my internet. Right. And then all of a sudden, then you get all your answers, satisfied. And then you go and you release the sensitive information or do the wire transfer.
That's it.
That's what we've seen so far in the popular examples that have been out there. But
and that's just,
that's going to become more and more common.
That's just one thing. What happens when AI has advanced enough that a criminal can just release its ass against one specific organization, and of course it will test that 90% of vulnerabilities that are out there, but then it will start to innovate. If this is working, what about this? What about this? What about that? Bang, bang, bang.
To me, it's going to exacerbate the arms race, right? Because once they're able to leverage AI in plain language that can make whatever ransomware or malware that they want to launch undetectable by the CrowdStrikes of the world and the SentinelOnes and the Huntresses and the Arctic Wolves,
going to happen.
Then all hats are off, because then the good guys are going to have to figure out what they did. It's going to take 6 months for them to productize it and get it to market. Meanwhile, the criminals act fast.
That's
right.
It. So, the chatter right now that I'm against are all these security companies that we've got AI, or, the criminals are.
It's like everybody had it's like if it's plugged into the wall, it's got AI.
Right.
Like everybody's like, got it. It's
and
like
that's simply for profit. So what you're doing is you're having that conversation. You're coming out with that misinformation that says AI this, AI that isn't really correct right now. So that when it does become correct, nobody's going to listen to that bullshit. That's the problem I have.
Yeah. Well, Brett, thank you so much. I know we're up.
Sorry about my language today.
No, it's perfectly fine. Hey, that's what editing is for, or the unfiltered version. Like, it's
got to be like
beep,
beep, beep, beep. Oh, that's Brett being Brett again.